Welcome to the Dawn to Dusk podcast with your host, Douglas Wood, author of From Dawn to Dusk, How to Build a Multi-Million-Dollar Law Practice and Then Give It Away. In each episode, Doug interviews distinguished legal professionals who have masterfully navigated their careers from inception to retirement and explores the intricacies of building a successful law practice and transitioning to retirement when the right time comes. Now, let's join Doug for today's insightful discussion.
Welcome to the Dawn to Dusk podcast, where we meet lawyers who have had successful careers, how they built those careers, and where they're going now. My guest today is a good friend from Ireland, who I've known for many, many years, Duncan Grehan. Duncan is the founding partner of Duncan Grehan Partners. He earned his MA and his LLB in Trinity College in Dublin, solicitor's license from the Incorporated Law Society of Ireland. He studied at the Institute for European Integration, the Max Planck Institute in Hamburg, and he is an accredited commercial mediator for Europe's Center of Effective Dispute Resolution. When he founded his firm in 1984, his vision was to create a firm that concentrates on assisting law firms and their clients in England, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and elsewhere in Europe. Duncan is a member of various trade associations and groups, including the British-German Jurists Association, the Global Advertising Lawyers Alliance, the Swiss-Irish-British Association, and the EU and International Affairs Committee of the Law Society of Ireland. In 2022, he received a great honor. He was awarded the Austrian Gold Medal of Honor for his services as special legal advisor to the Austria's embassy in Ireland. But really importantly, he's also the founding member and chair of the Knock Harley, is that right? How I pronounced it there? Duncan, close enough? Cricket Club in Ireland. It has over 50 members, all who are over 50, and established the Master Cricket tournaments. And so he is an avid cricket player, and we do not have enough time in this podcast for him to explain cricket to us. So we're just going to acknowledge that he knows cricket. But anyway, welcome, Duncan, to the podcast.
Thank you, Doug. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah. So you and I have known each other long enough to just relax and have a fun discussion is exactly what we're going to do. But as I said earlier to you before we started, the viewers of the podcast are folks who are building law firms and also who are letting law firms go, sort of both ends of the spectrum. And I was particularly interested and inspired by your choice to not go with a large law firm, whatever it was, and to create this smaller firm. Take us through your thought process and why you decided to do that and how you did it.
It's some time ago, so I'll have to reflect on that question a bit. But quite honestly, I did work, having had an interesting academic career, and acquired the German language while I worked in Germany, including a scholarship I got from the Council of Europe to give me a 4-month intensive German language course. I am today a proficient, professionally experienced and proficient German speaker, as well as you can hear an English speaker. And I worked then, I was sort of recruited by Ireland's then largest law firm in Dublin, and I turned down another option to become an expert in intellectual property law, a scholarship I was offered down in Munich by the Max Planck Institute. So I took up working with McCann Fitzgerald, which then and today is one of the top law firms in Ireland. And through that, I acquired practical experience of commercial law solutions and civil litigation law solutions. But I also spotted a market that didn't seem to have any solution provider, which was Irish law solutions to the German-speaking world. And as a result of that, I decided not to wait and see whether I would become a partner in the big law firm. And I decided to set up my own law firm. And I did that in October 1984. And it never went wrong.
So when you started off, so you would go cold turkey into your own law firm. You're the sole practitioner at that point. You had to find some other partners over the course of time. What did you do to start building your clients? How did you attract clients, and how, what kind of challenges did you have in that process?
Well, I was very lucky because the law firm that I had worked with, McCann Fitzgerald, asked me to continue processing quite a lot of casework that I was processing for their clients. They just handed the clients over to me and continued to do that for about 20 years. They were very good because I had no conflict of interest with them or their business interests, because I'm a small independent law firm. And I saw that Ireland is a small country, as you know, Jack, with a small population, and the business of being a lawyer is very family orientated, who you know and having those contacts. So I realized that I would not be able to breach into that market. And so therefore I looked for the international market as the source of my work. And that's really how it proceeded successfully. I was quite happy to take on the smallest case, because it's always a good lesson. If you do a good job on a small case, you're going to be recommended, or maybe the next time around it'll be a more valuable case or a more difficult case. And so that's what happened in my early days, and it worked well. So,
you make an interesting point about finding that niche that is not answered in the marketplace. It's sometimes it's what sometimes they call the blinding glimpse of the obvious, where it's right in front of you, but you don't see it. And then suddenly it hits you and you go, wow, there's a real need there. And that was really interesting that you talked about that as part of your focus. And also then the spin on that the existing law firm you were with, the prior law firm, still saw you as an asset, and you didn't represent a conflict of interest, which is another sort of niche kind of approach to things, where you not only find an area of specialization that might work, but you also do so and you're not seen as being competitive or with the other law firms from whom you're going to get the work. So you become complementary to them. And that's kind of an interesting way you started off your career as a lawyer on your own. The other thing I think that viewers will find instructive to hear is your comment about no case was too small. And I still believe that even when I was in large law firms, that no case is too small, because you never know what first you're going to learn from it, as you did, undoubtedly, and it can become a big client eventually. I mean, some of the smallest entrepreneurs turn into be the biggest, industrial magnates around. So, I'm sure that whoever first turned down Steve Jobs when he asked for legal advice is probably still ruling that day. So I'm sure there were some people that wouldn't represent him in the early days. So that's really that's some great observation that you make for the folks watching the podcast. So you're out there on your own, starting out. You had a good base from the referrals. What were the challenges? What were some of the things that what kept you up at night? And did you ever wake up one morning and say, "What the hell am I doing this for?"
Well, no, I didn't, because I was up to taking on the challenge. As a young boy, before I became a lawyer, I always believed that I was good at anything I did, and I was confident, and I had the skills to remain good, and therefore become captain of my rugby team, become captain of my cricket team, and become captain of my school, and get 2 university degrees, even though I was also a long-haired actor in my student days, like we all were, back in the 1970s. But it's great to have those challenges, and it's important to be confident, and it's also important to accept and realize that a lawyer is never fully trained. It's a day-to-day knowledge acquisition process, and skill process and experience process. We are very lucky in our country, which is a common law system we inherited over 100 years ago, while we were part of the United Kingdom, that we have a divided profession. We have solicitors, who are the people who deal with client acquisition and client processing and administration. And then we have court lawyers called barristers, who assist you in the advocacy role and who assist you then in presenting your case before the court. So that meant it doesn't matter whether you're a big law firm or a small law firm, the same set of barristers, if asked to work for either of them, have to accept. It's part of the process of the ethics of the code of ethics of barristers in Ireland. And so therefore I realized I don't need to have 60, 70, 100 colleagues working with me and sharing the cost and the administration and the profits, when I can bring the same cases before the judge with the same team as the big law firms can, even though I'm a small law firm. So yeah, that's a great advantage that lawyers in our country have, and indeed in England and Wales and Scotland. The process of professions in Canada, I know, has fused. So there isn't two separate professions, there's now only one. And that may well happen in Ireland. It's on the way to happening, I think. But you have to work in the day that you live, rather than into a day that might be there.
Well, I'm curious. What is the decision process one goes through, or the actual physical process one goes through in deciding whether they're going to be a solicitor or a barrister?
Yeah, that's not an easy question for any young law students to answer and to make a decision on. But I think the people who tend to become barristers tend to be, in their student life, actors and advocates, people who like debating and arguing and who like being on stage under the limelight. Whereas solicitors tend to be lower profile.
Well, we don't have it as a formal split here in the States, but that is a good description of what most litigators are like. They're actors who just need to argue every single thing that comes before them, whether there's a need to argue it or not. As a transactional lawyer over the years, as much as I loved all my litigators and their ability to learn something so quickly and then move on to the next thing, sometimes you had to really fight with them to keep focus on what you're trying to accomplish, as opposed to just argue for argue's sake. It was crazy stuff. Yeah, no question about it. But anyway, so as you're building your firm over the years and you acquired a few other partners, what were some of the ways you marketed? How did you get the word out there that the firm was available and expand your clientele beyond those that you inherited from the previous law firm?
Just one correction, that I actually never was in partnership, even though I called myself Duncan Grehan Partners. Frankly, I was always the proprietor of my law firm, except for 2 years when I did go into a partnership in the early days and realized, it's not working out as well as I would expect it to. So I kept control of the firm and ownership of it. We never. So in terms of, sorry, the second part of your question, Doug, repeat that?
Well, what were some of the marketing things you did? How did you get the word out there beyond the...
I'll answer that one. You and I met each other at the beginning of the internet network system. The world became a closer marketplace. And we worked together in the Global Advertising Lawyers Alliance, which, thank you, Doug, you were very responsible for discovering and inventing and placing in life. You remember that you and I created a website for it. That was at the beginning of the days. I realized, well, that's the way to go. And that was about 1990 or something like that. So I said, I don't need to publish a brochure about my law firm and distribute it at conferences, that was what the big law firms were doing then, hard copy brochures about and advertising materials about what their services were. It was easier and a lot cheaper to use the internet. Just set it up on and go live, and that was a way to that the global market became aware of our firm's existence and the services we had to offer at no cost to me. It was a lucky breakthrough that we happened to be in the right place at the right time, and as you know, that's the the key element of any success.
Yeah, yeah. What I find interesting nowadays, having you and I were there at the beginning of all the internet, and we remember when you still use carbon copies and faxes didn't even exist. But not going to age us too much here. But anyway, when it first started out, we were very fascinated by it. We saw the great potential it had. A lot of us did a lot of work with it, built up the brands and that kind of thing. Now you come to today, and the young lawyers, it's almost they don't focus on its value nearly as much as they should. They just sort of go with their firm, whatever it is. They've got a pretty boring website. Their bio is buried somewhere in it. It always starts out with something very boring and non-brand oriented. And it's sort of become, in many ways, most lawyers today, younger lawyers, don't see the potential of the internet and potential of LinkedIn, the potential of other methodologies they can use to develop their practice. So that actually gives them a great advantage over the others, just as you and I had a great advantage when we were younger and started playing with the internet, because most of the senior lawyers that we worked with didn't know it from a hole in the ground. So we were able to take great advantage of that and move forward. And so the next generation is starting to do that as well. But the fact that many of them don't gives those that do the competitive advantage. And now we add on top of that whatever AI is going to do, and it's absolutely mind-boggling at this point what it can do and where it can take lawyers and law firms from a marketing standpoint, reaching out to clients and offering them services. As you put it, one of the things that we loved about the internet was how cheap it was. I mean, it was really you didn't even have to pay for email. I mean, it was like it was crazy. I'm going, how can this all be so free? Little did we know that it turned out differently in the end of the day. But that said, there's all these tools that are there, and how AI is going to make those tools even richer and better, rather than lawyers being afraid of it. I mean, I think it's something that they can do a lot better off if they embrace it and figure out what to do with it. Although I don't have that, I just do it. I play with it now just to have fun with it and that kind of thing. It's interesting. I did early on when I used ChatGPT. I was asking it some questions and it was getting him wrong, and I almost started to argue with it, but it wouldn't argue back. Then I realized I'm talking to a machine. It's like, duh.
But I mean, as you say, it's a question of moving with the times. As when you and I were starting up, we didn't have smartphones. I remember you had a BlueBerry.
BlackBerry.
Sorry, BlackBerry. You ate BlueBerry.
Why they didn't? It was blue, but they called it BlackBerry. I never did understand it.
I used to use a Nokia, which was a Swedish.
Right, yeah, they were the early ones too.
Yeah, but even photocopy machines didn't exist, when we were. So, and we've got progress and move at the times and use the opportunities. As you say, artificial intelligence is going to be a tool that is going to be used by lawyers to the advantage of their clients in the future and presently as well. But that's the main message: is always do what is best for your client, not what is best for you as a lawyer. Put your client's interests first. And therefore, I was the type of lawyer who liked to get an early solution to the client's problem or transactional issue, rather than delay it and try and build up my time and charge more money. I always felt it was best to bring a solution home to the client early, because in that way the client would really benefit from it, but also appreciate your work and give you the next problem that they cropped up that came, or refer you on to another client. I ended up acting for a lot of insurance companies as well. And I think the reason possibly why the sort of chain reaction of one insurance company recommending me to another was because of an early solution, rather than dragging the thing out and sort of trying to make more money out of it as a lawyer. Always put your client interest first.
That's an interesting observation. It reminds me of I had a college professor for contracts, and we're all sitting in the classroom, and he says to us, okay, you're sitting in a conference room, sitting beside you is the person who hired you. On the other side of the table is another lawyer with the person who hired them. How many clients are in the room? We're looking at, what are you talking about? How many clients are in the room? So one person raises their hand and says, one, my clients, anyone I care about. And the professor goes, wrong. So he looks at it, okay, want to make next one, want to take a guess? So kid raises his hand, says two. There's obviously two. There's my client and his client. Wrong. So we're all looking like, starry-eyed, not knowing what the hell he's talking about. He goes, there's three. There's your client, the other client, and the transaction. And those two clients are in there to get the transaction done, to get the solution finished, and to get to, they're not there to pay you a lot of money. They're in there, both in there, to get out of there with the solution that they want. And that's an attitude that obviously you have. But that's, I think, in many ways, when you talk about looking for reasons clients refer you, it's because of that, not because you recreated the whole universe. It's because you gave them a solution that worked for the moment, and that's what they're looking for.
Yep, I agree, Doug. Yeah. So yeah, no, I mean it's a very interesting career. I've never been bored. I find it. I mean, every day going into the office, you were never sure what was going to happen the day you arrived. New work will arrive in your desk, new challenges, and that doesn't mean that you have to disregard the ones that were already on your desk. You just have to deal with those too. It was always a very exciting career.
When I first started out, my first law firm that I worked for were two partners and two associates. And that was really frenetic. So I said, I'm going to go to a bigger firm. So I went to a firm with 40 to 60 lawyers. It varied over time, which eventually I ran. And then as that was getting to be a pain in the neck, I decided I'm going to go to this giant law firm, and it would be easier. I wouldn't have to worry about so many things and whatever else. I learned pretty quickly that the only difference between running a 40 to 60 lawyer law firm and being involved with a 2,000 lawyer law firm was the decimal point moved over a little bit. But it was the same kind of hassles, the same kinds of challenges every morning. And also, though, the great challenges and the fun. I mean, there's one thing that I think you and I share is that we've had a lot of fun practicing law. And we've met some wonderful people, some crazy people. We've had some wonderful successes and the like. And it's been a wonderful journey, and it continues to be a journey for both of us. But you're right that I don't think it matters whether you're a solo practitioner or whether you're a partner in the world's largest law firm. Your experience as a lawyer is you and how you interface with the colleagues, clients, and the like. And it doesn't matter how large a law firm. It may be different kinds of cases, different kinds of resources, whatever. But in the end of the day, whether you're going to be a happy lawyer or not, it is on you, and whether you find the challenge and the opportunities wherever you are. And you found that obviously in your firm, and many others have as well in their endeavors of every size and form, whether they're in-house, they're outside, they're in government, they're in public service, whatever they are. Over the years, we've both encountered lawyers who just seem to fit into that niche really well and who love what they do and do a very effective job for their clients. So
yeah.
So as the firm progressed and you were a solo, what made you sort of decide, I've got to bring on some help. I got to bring on some more people. And what went through your mind when you did that?
Well, I mean, Doug, just so that we are aware that, I never sort of expanded beyond 4 or 5 lawyers. We never got bigger than that. We had administrators as well, and we had interns and trainees. So a team of perhaps 10 people would have been the max, and that was increased to that size because there are different types of legal services that a customer base, a client base requires. So, for example, we have done many, many real estate transactions over the last 40-something years, but I've never once done one myself. I've always had guys in the team who specialize doing that. Okay, similarly, we've done multiple inheritance law and probate, administration of estates activity, not done by me ever. Again, I needed guys who could do that. Okay, and we chose to then not get into areas of law that we didn't have we didn't want to get into, or didn't have any lawyers in our team who would be good at doing that, offering that service. And I mean, in particular, we avoided divorce law. We never did anything like that. We never did any, unhappy sort of family relationship type of work. We never also did any crime, legal work for that involved crime and breaches of criminal law or adherence to criminal law, whichever side you take. So, you know, you have to be selective in terms of the areas of work. And if you do that and exclude other areas, then you don't have to have a mega team of colleagues. And as I said before, you just decline. And also, in our profession, in our country, before you offer any advice, the client has to accept your terms of service, including your cost terms, you know, and then these days, the clients also have to prove their identity and with documentary proof. Yeah. And so there's quite a bit of a regulatory requirement before a client is accepted as your client. So that often upsets people, and they will say, "Oh God, I'm not going to do that." But what they don't realize is that they'd have to go to another lawyer and then go through the same process again. In the European Union, it's the same in 27 countries, that every lawyer has to offer that regulatory introduction. So, you know,
it's very interesting the greater formality that you have in Europe with respect to bringing on clients. While it's recommended, you know, strongly recommended in the United States that you get a retainer agreement, you set out your terms, et cetera. In theory, you can bring on a client without ever telling them anything about your terms, just, you know, sort of hoping they'll understand, or just telling them what your billable hour rate is and then nothing else. And that can create the relationship absent, you know, absent any kind of written agreement. And the other thing that sort of gets lawyers in the United States sometimes in trouble too is that whether there's an attorney-client relationship or not is not whether you, the lawyer, thinks there is. Here in our country, it's whether the individual you're talking to thinks there is. So if they have reason to believe that you are their lawyer, because you don't start off like they do in Europe, where I'm your lawyer, when we sign our agreement, we get everything done. If they think you're their lawyer, you're their lawyer, and it can get into some really dicey situation. You know, we're seeing more and more formality with respect to the relationships in the United States, but not so much on a smaller scale, where we see the formalities more tends to be on contingency cases, where you've got to feel.
In relation to that, Doug, we've got to be careful when, and this is moving along to the sort of dust side of our discussion. When you stop, the question is, for how long can you call yourself a lawyer from a point of view of the law? In our country, that we have this sort of cartel concept called solicitor. You've got this umbrella concept called lawyer, but then you've got different types of lawyers. You've got academic lawyers, you've got student lawyers, you've got lawyers that are regulated by the Incorporated Law Society of Ireland. They're called solicitors. And then you've got lawyers who are regulated by the Bar Council of Ireland, and they're barristers. But you cannot continue to call yourself a solicitor, which I am, by the way, if you haven't got a practicing certificate. And that's a license that you have to get, a legal license, a statutory license. It's a year-to-year license. It's the duration of your license to call yourself a solicitor is 1 year. Secondly, you only will get that if you are insured, professional indemnity insurance. And thirdly, if you are complying with the regulatory authority's requirement for you to have continuous education points scored in that year that you're licensed to practice. Otherwise, you cannot, if you don't comply with that, a judge will call you a quack lawyer.
Well, I've seen a few quack lawyers here in the States. We have most states have a similar process where you know, I mean, it's a relatively functory administrative process by which you pay your dues every year, you file your papers, and you certify that you've got the continuing legal education. But there are still a number of states here in America that require no CLE. You know, that they don't even have a bar exam to become a lawyer in those states. I mean, it's a much more of a it's a much less formality here
Yeah.
in the States than we see in Europe, and I guess there's pluses and minuses depending on where you're looking at it, but it does
But
bring
that's
us sort
something
of.
that's something the European Union, there's this freedom of movement, right? But the freedom of a lawyer to practice in another member state of the European Union is very, very restricted and conditional. Um, so it's not a simple thing. The law is, under European law, is that a lawyer from Germany, if he wants to represent his client before the courts in Ireland, must do so in conjunction with a lawyer who's admitted to be a lawyer in Ireland. Okay?
We have roughly similar things with that with regard to, when you want to bring a case in another state where you're not admitted, you got to affiliate yourself.
Right.
But increasingly, we're finding here that lawyers, particularly after the pandemic and the stay at home, there's this whole new sort of philosophy beginning to build here in the States that it shouldn't matter if you're a member of Massachusetts. You should still be only a member of Massachusetts. You should still be able to do what you need to do in New York. That these older sort of archaic ideas of bars are only for a particular state, and you've got to then multiplicity. You got to get more bar admissions, et cetera, is sort of beginning to become less popular and less supportive. So we'll see where it goes. I mean, I think it's changing significantly as we speak, but I'm not sure where it's going to go in the end of the day. But I do know that where we all go at the end of the day, and sooner or later, we got to figure out, okay, what's next, and you get to a point where you start thinking about anyway, changing your approach to things and moving on or whatever it is. I joke with people saying every one of us has our used by date. We just don't know what it is before we expire. So we want to maybe control that as opposed to having it controlled by others. So where are you in that spectrum, Duncan? Where are you in sort of the change?
I mean, I realized that being a busy lawyer has impacts on the lifestyle that you lead. Okay, so for example, you don't see your children as much, or you don't see your wife as much, or you don't enjoy the real estate that you've acquired, your property, and so also you don't know how many years you've got to go and how good your health may be to allow you to enjoy what you have built up and acquired in terms of the luxuries that you didn't have when you started, when it was dawn. During that period, that lifetime, you acquire a lot of things that you didn't have as a young person. And the question is, well, at what stage will I start enjoying all that stuff? And so, and it also depends a lot on your private life circumstances too. It's not just, you've got to, because, when you, for example, get married, you're essentially no longer a single person. You are sharing your life with somebody. So you've got to take into account your partner's life expectations, and as well as your own. And so that was one of the reasons I decided, coming up to age 60, actually, that I should look to the next chapter of our life book and see what else one can do with one's life apart from, dedicating it to being a practicing lawyer. And I saw that there was an opportunity to finish up, and I did. The younger members of my law firm were delighted to see that I saw an opportunity to exit, and were delighted to buy me out. And that was the way I did it. Now that's almost 9 years ago, but obviously, it's a process that one doesn't just close the door. one gently closes the door. So you have caseloads that you have to unwind or pass on to your successor. You have roles that you want to continue to play. I'm a consultant in the law firm. I'm continuing to support it and attend conferences and attend meetings and do pro bono work and those sort of activities. Earlier in the early years that I stopped being proprietor and became a consultant, I was busier than I am today in terms of unwinding caseloads and finding solutions and making sure that the clients were happy to be placed in the hands of my colleagues. And I should say to you that all of the colleagues that are now in charge and proprietors of the firm, there's mainly just two, by the way, it's simple, were apprenticed and trained by me. So the standard of their work equates with the standard of work that I provided the clients. So there you are, Doug.
Okay, so when you came to that realization, and you did it over now for the last 9 years, you've been through this process. I know in my case, when I made a decision and I started to transition clients, there were times during that process that you get a feeling of no longer being relevant, and you're wondering whether or not you're relevant to your clients, relative to your colleagues, and very often they have no ill intention, but they'll do things that they don't realize sort of make you feel a little irrelevant, like saying on an email, moving Doug to BCC because he doesn't need to be involved in this anymore, and that kind of stuff. Did you have to deal with that? Did you experience those kinds of emotional ups and downs along the process?
No, I didn't actually. I was never wounded or injured by any such type of implied reaction by the client base. I was happy enough that the clients were all, and continue to be, very happy to use the services of the law firm, which, by the way, bears my name. And so it's important for the law firm, as well as for my reputation, that I continue to be available to help and offer services, and that I don't misbehave.
There you go. So now that you've sort of done this 9 years, what do you do to, what are your other interests? What other interests did you find? Did you build them from interests you had prior to deciding to move along? Or give us a little bit about what makes you tick today.
It's quite extraordinary. A lot of this term garden leave does apply to people of my age when they have retired from everyday practice. Yeah, so I am interested in gardening, but I also, myself and my wife Barbara, love traveling the world and seeing places that we've never seen before and experiencing. And a lot of the colleagues that we became friends with over the years, who are based in countries all over the world, welcome us to come and visit them and stay with them, and or introduce us to itineraries, tourist itineraries that otherwise we would, inside information, in other words, about when you go to a city, which restaurant you should go to, what bar you should visit, and that sort of thing. But okay, so I continued to play cricket, which is, by the way, just for information, it's not called the rules of cricket, it's the laws of cricket.
Ah. That says so much, just that it's not a rule, it's a law. I get it.
And that's offered me lots of opportunities. I've been playing cricket all over Italy, England, Pakistan, twice on tour. So you see exotic sort of places through that sport. And as you know, ever since I was 11, I was also a keen hunter. I used my great-grandfather's shotguns. They're about 140 years old today, and they're still shooting, as well as guns that were built last year for the purposes that they're intended. This is hunting for no other purpose, okay? So yeah, no, and we've got a lovely place down in the seaside, down in County Kerry, and a place up in Westmeath, sorry, on the east coast in the Royal County of Meath, which you've been to, Doug, actually. You brought.
I should in full disclosure disclose to the viewers that I'm also a citizen of Ireland, and so we're brothers in many ways. So yeah, and I had a lot of I've been to Ireland many times, and there is no more friendly country on earth than Ireland. It is just a beautiful place. Although it is green for a reason, because it rains an awful lot there.
Yeah.
It gets plenty of water, so it's no
Climate change.
You made a point, though. There's an observation I would make in what you were just talking about, Duncan, that sadly too many older lawyers don't do, and they stay in work too long, and they never do get to enjoy and take advantage of all the stuff that they've accumulated and all the things that they could do. I often would ask my colleagues who were more senior, do you have a bucket list of all the things you want to do before, it's all over? And most of them go, no, what do you mean? And I go, well, aren't there things you want to see, places you want to go, people you want to meet, whatever? And they go, well, no, I'm just kind of doing what I'm doing. I go, okay, fine. I mean, it's more the norm, unfortunately, that many older lawyers just can't stop being a lawyer, and they fail to ever enjoy, the fruit. I mean, it's a tough profession.
I agree, and that was another reason.
When you get older, it gets harder. When you get older,
yeah, Doug, amazingly, that was one of the reasons I chose to opt to sort of move out from the daily practice, because a colleague of mine, I always remember he told me that his father died as he was walking to his office. There was a guy, and lawyers do that. They work to the end of their life, just as you were saying. And so the rule, a lesson that could be that I learned from that was not to let that happen. And to see that there's more to life than being a lawyer.
I remember one of my partners telling me the story of his father, and how his father died at his desk, right, in his office. And I mean, I just that is so sad. I mean, that's really sad, because no doubt when you're in your 80s, particularly, or your 90s, and that's but if you haven't figured out a way to enjoy life by then, and you're still sitting at your desk practicing law, that's a sad story. One of the quick story I remember, I had a senior partner in my old law firm who was not a very nice guy, and but he kept working, and finally he retired and left. And I went to a restaurant one day, and I saw him sitting in the corner, and I asked the waiter whether he comes there often. He said he comes there almost every day. I said, does anybody ever sit with him? He goes, no. It was just you hold on too long, and you hold on alone after a while, and there's no reason to. I don't mean to be morbid here. The dusk. When I wrote the book Dawn to Dusk, I didn't write dawn to sunset. There's still plenty of light at dusk, and what I try to tell more senior lawyers is, go out there and enjoy it, rather than wait for other people to tell you you're going to enjoy it whether you like it or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think enjoy the prize that you worked hard to get. Open your presence to yourself, and it's great. I mean, I have a friend who was a very, very senior judge in the United Kingdom, and I discovered recently that even though he's 92 years old, he's now a judge in the appellate court in Hong Kong. 92 years old.
Wow.
So, that's his choice.
Yeah. Well, I remember a case I had in Dallas, Texas, litigation I worked on, and we had one of those senior judges. And in the federal system here in the United States, the judge stays on until they die. They're a lifetime appointment, and they then eventually get to a point they call senior status, but they still get active cases. So we had this case before this particular judge in Dallas, Texas, and occasionally, this is no joke, occasionally he would fall asleep at the bench.
Yeah.
Just nod off, and you had to sort of time yourself to make sure that, okay, you kind of remember, well, what was I saying when he nodded off? I want to make sure I repeat it so he didn't miss it. And his clerk would walk up onto the bench whenever the guy nodded off, and he'd drop a book or he'd do something like to wake the guy up. And nobody had the guts to say to this judge, it'd be helpful if you were awake during the trial.
Yeah.
But anyway, so sometimes they just, because they stay on way too long. That's the case across many professions.
In Ireland, judges have to retire age 70 when they hit 70. That's the end of their career.
Which at my old law firm at Reed Smith, we had an automatic de-equitization at the age of 70. You were no longer an equity partner; you became a regular, employee for all intents and purposes. And that was the revelation I had when I was in my 60s, and thinking of doing some things within the firm. I realized, whoa, even though that was in the agreement when I first came on board, I don't even know if I ever read it, because what was I going to do? Negotiate it? I mean, there was no negotiation. So
I don't believe that one, Doug.
So I said, okay, I get the hint. Anyway, so any last words, Duncan, of advice you can give to both the younger attorneys who are watching this and the more senior folks who are watching this?
I think health is very important when you're young, as well as when you're senior, because health is part and parcel of life, and if you've got to work hard to make money and to support your family and to bring yourself through to the stage where you can consider retiring, you've got to remain healthy because and clear-headed during your working hours, and I think those are the only sort of thoughts that spring to mind in reply to your question. Just remain healthy and physically fit.
There couldn't be any better advice than that, for sure, because you see so many instances where that's not the case, and you obviously have done a great job of that, and out there, hunting and trotting around the world playing that weird game by the laws of cricket, not the rules of cricket, which someday you will explain this to me, but it won't be today. So thank you, Duncan, for being a guest. I know that the viewers enjoyed this, and looking forward to bumping into you at one of the gala meetings or somewhere else around the world, as we both globetrot, which we both do quite a bit of. So Thanks again for being here.
An honor to have been asked to be interviewed by you, Doug, and best of luck with this podcast. Good luck.
Thank you for joining us on the Dawn to Dusk podcast. You can learn more on building and transitioning a multi-million-dollar law practice in Doug's book, From Dawn to Dusk: How to Build a Multi-Million-Dollar Law Practice and Then Give It Away. If you're interested in working with Doug, suggesting future guests, or have questions you'd like Doug to ask guests in upcoming episodes, reach out to him at douglas.wood@wood.law or visit his website at dawntodusk.wood.law. And if you enjoyed the podcast, don't forget to subscribe and share it with your peers. Until next time, we appreciate your viewership.